Well, Jim, let's get another question here. This one sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Timmy in Texas.
Timmy!
Hey, y'all. Love
Timmy!
the show.
Timmy!
You doing South Park
Timmy.
now?
Timmy.
All right, let's calm ourselves now. Lex Luger is being brought up in social media as a future WWE Hall of Famer. The general notion is that he has paid for his mistakes. If Chris Benoit's actions, which were much more heinous, is still blacklisted, trying to make sense of some of the writing here.
We're going south fast.
Very fast. Should Lex Luger be eligible for the WWE Hall of Fame despite any of his past actions? And should he be blacklisted from the WWE Hall of Fame?
They didn't put Benoit in before.
He's not in after. Yeah, he's not in, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is, I don't know how he's making this equivalency in that. No, obviously, if they'd have put him in beforehand, I don't know if they'd have taken him out or if they'd have just ignored it or if they'd have publicly taken him out. But with Luger, I don't know whether Vince is still mad at him. I don't know where that stands, but it seems like if he wasn't, then he would have popped up somewhere doing something with him before now. But was he part of any lawsuits?
I don't know.
Recently?
But you know why he may be mad at him? What was his first gimmick in WWE?
The narcissist.
Carrying a mirror everywhere he went. And Vince hates mirrors.
Oh, for heavens. But anyway, no, I mean, especially at the current state of affairs with the names that they are sometimes, lobbing up there as Hall of Fame worthy, Lex Luger for 1987 to 2000 would be up there, I would think. Would you not?
I would think so. He was a big star in WCW. He was a big star in the WWF, even though they bungled his push, not having him defeat Yokozuna. And then having him go from the Yokozuna feud into the Ludwig Borga feud.
Yeah, that rip-roaring heated feud with Ludwig Borga.
You probably have seen him before the pandemic in the last few years. Is Luger wheelchair bound or can he walk?
I don't want to be the one to make that adjudication, but every time I've seen him, he's been in a chair over the last few times that I've seen him, and it's been several years ago for the last time. But he told me the story because he had several things go on, and I had seen him once years ago, and he said the initial trouble that he had with the nerve in his neck, believe it or not, he had spent like 3 or 4 hours on a long flight with his head turned, talking to the person next to him, and the package has become a chatterbox in his later years. And then he realized he'd fucked up his neck some kind of way, and that started some kind of nerve problem. And then he's had, other issues, and he looks nothing like physically, unfortunately, that he did back in the day, but I think by everybody's account that comes in contact with him, he's much happier, nicer, calmer. I mean, not like he was a big asshole to begin with, but just a calmer, friendlier, more humble, nicer person, even with his situation. I would think, yes, that I don't know how Vince can be mad that bad for him fucking bailing on him. Would he, if Rick Rude was around, would he still be pissed at Rick Rude for that? That's the same thing. He
put Jeff Jarrett in the Hall of Fame.
He put Jeff Jarrett in the Hall of Fame. So I don't know, is Vince pissed off because Lex was a spectacular, Lex's original push in his company was a spectacular failure and it was kind of Vince's fault. Or did it? And, when Vince fell out of love with him as the guy by WrestleMania 10 in 1994, it wasn't Lex's fault. He was doing the same shit he'd always done. And as we've gone back and said, if you take 1989 Lex Luger and watch him with today's eyes, he'd be one of the biggest fucking in-ring stars in the business, one of the best workers.
Absolutely.
So I don't know.
I guess at best, some of the things you would hear about him in the 90s were that he was aloof at times. He had a little bit of a reputation sometimes amongst fans, at least. I don't know about guys in the business. But when you saw him after everything he went through, did he change? I mean, was he the same guy, or did he seem nicer or anything?
That's what I just, said, is that now that, he's not on top of the world in terms of being a big star in wrestling, and he hasn't, been inducted in the Hall of Fame or whatever, and he's got the physical problems. He's happier, calmer, more pleasant, polite. And like I said, he wasn't an asshole, but Lex, when he got in the wrestling business, he didn't really understand it. And they hired him because of his incredible genetics, his physique, the way he looked. He'd be the next Hulk Hogan. But he didn't really understand the business, and he had the thing with Brody because he didn't understand the business. And then he comes into Crockett. Crockett gave him the first big guaranteed contract because he wanted the guy that was going to be the guy to compete with Hulk Hogan. And he puts him in the Horsemen so that he's surrounded by the absolute best talent in the world so they can teach him. But Lex, the reason why we said he made a better heel than he did a babyface, Lex was not a confident person in his personality in wrestling. He didn't connect with the fans. He was perfect in a lot of ways. He had a high grade point average. He had that incredible physique. He had that kind of way of stance and talking of, he was looking down his nose at people, even though he wasn't really. And that led to him being a more natural heel. And also when he was a heel, he could say things, he could act out more, and it wasn't really him doing it. He's one of those kind of guys that had to be somebody else to turn their personality on. And as a heel, it came across better because what did the fans have in common with this guy? He wasn't an everyman. He went to a big college and he got great grades and he fucking has a perfect body and he's got a big contract. The big contract got him all kinds of heat with a lot of the boys because he got a big contract because of the way he looked. He grew into it. He learned. He worked hard. But to have Lex Luger signed at least to a contract guaranteeing him more money than Ric Flair, even though Flair was making more, so he had problems in the locker room adjusting. He would say things that he didn't really realize was kind of being snotty to the guys. Like, I've told this story before, but it's been a while. He had a first-class plane ticket in his contract with Crockett, whereas back in those days, if it was a 500-mile or less flight, you could upgrade if you had a frequent flyer for like $20. So one day we're on Delta and we're both in first class, me and the package. And, I'm just trying to make a little conversation because I'm nervous on planes anyway. And so I said, Lex, he played football in Memphis for that, was it USFL? Was that the team?
I believe so, yeah.
Anyway.
Showboats.
There you go, the Memphis Showboats. You played football in Memphis. I said, you must have watched Memphis wrestling. But I figured this is an easy question. This is when he first got to the territory, and it's an easy question. Everybody in Memphis watched fucking wrestling. It was, state law. And he said, well, it was on a few times in the locker room when we come back from practice, but I never really watched much of it. Oh, I said, well, and then I had to ask, I said, Lex, what would you do if you were in the Memphis territory starting out now instead of Crockett and you were, making $400 a week? He said, oh, I wouldn't be doing that. Oh shit, I'd be doing something else. So in other words, he just told me or anybody else who all of us did that, Well, I wouldn't do that. But he didn't know. So he came off a bit heelish to the people and to the boys sometimes, and also there was the natural attitude that a guy looks like that has had a lot of people make over him, as they used to say, as Aunt Lola would say, all of his life. And so he was kind of, full of himself, but you need to be a star. But he wasn't an asshole. He just, in his early years especially, he didn't really get wrestling. And then I think Crockett was the best place for him, and really WCW, while all the Crockett guys like Flair and the Horsemen and Sting and all of his friends and all the people that he had really grown into this spot with were there. But when they started going away, or it started being a big fucking business under Turner, and then all the mid-90s bullshit, and he got the pills going on, and at that point I think that was probably not the best time in his wrestling career.